Greetings.
Yeah. It's all our show. Okay. All right, I'm gonna say just a few words and introduce you. Good morning. It's a pretty exciting day here at the cradle of Texas liberty. And the first words out of my mouth are going to be, thank you, Phil Collins. I mean, I'm so excited the hair on the back of my neck is standing up. I'm going to tell you. You know, we have an example of incredible generosity from a man who is a true Texan, from a man that knows more about the Alamo and Texas history than 99.9999% of those of us who live here, who had Texas history in the 4th grade, Texas history in the 7th grade. We have a man who is a historian, a benefactor, and I have to tell you, I've been around him a couple of times, just a down-to-earth, normal, unassuming, pleasant guy to have a chat with, as they say. I think chat is the right term. And as you know, we are announcing formally today that Phil Collins has decided to contribute, donate, convey, whatever term you wish to use, his the most extensive collection of Alamo memorabilia, artifacts, documents to the people of Texas. To be held in trust for generations to come so that they may understand and appreciate what happened here. So I'm not going to talk much anymore. I do want to thank the staff of the Texas General Land Office, our partners here, the Daughters of the Republic of Texas, who have one common goal and vision, and that is to educate folks about Texas history, warts and all on occasion, to let people know about what occurred here, the total, complete story about Texans and Tejanos who fought for liberty here. And that is our mission. I have to put a plug in for the General Land Office Save Texas History program. Go to savetexashistory.org or just Google Save Texas History and look at what we have online that helps us in our efforts to preserve Texas history. So help me now give a huge, raucous, boisterous welcome to our friend, Mr. Phil Collins.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I had no idea there was going to be this many people, because if I had an idea, I would have rehearsed something to say. But this is a very special day for me because I've had a love affair with this place since I was about 5 years old. Like many men of my age, I'm 63, but like many men of my age, we grew up with the very romanticized version of what happened here. Walt Disney and Fess Parker and King of the Wild Frontier, and then a little later we grew up with John Wayne's version of what happened here. And I was, even at 5 years old, I was totally hooked on the story. I admitted I was hooked on the romantic side of it as well, but for me it was just something that stuck with me. And you know, I come from London, so we have lots of history there. Why I didn't get as fascinated by something in English history, I'll never know. But it was here, San Antonio, the Alamo, the shape of that church. It was just something I used to go and play in the garden with my soldiers, and I never even dreamed at that point that I would be collecting. I never even thought that things would exist from that period still. And then, I don't know, in the mid-'80s I was on tour and I was in Washington, D.C., and I was walking through a shop that sold autographed documents. and I came across a letter written by Davy Crockett. And I was stunned that this actually was his handwriting, and this letter was written by him probably when he was a congressman. I didn't buy it because it was too expensive for me. But it made me think, wow, this stuff is out there. And slowly I started to, serendipity, I kind of came into contact with a couple of things. I started collecting. And before long, I was spending money on that, spending all the money that I made from music. Some people would buy Ferraris, some people would buy houses. I bought old bits of metal and old bits of paper. And before long, I had this very large collection. And I've been starting in the last couple of years to wonder what I could do with it, because as you get to my age, you kind of start to think about that kind of thing. What am I going to do with it? I've got it in my home, in my basement in Switzerland, and I look at it every day, but nobody else was enjoying it. And so I was starting to think about what to do with it, and as luck would have it, I happened to meet Kay Tucker. Actually, what happened, I came into Texas, I came into San Antonio one day, and my partner, who isn't here today, Jim Gimmerin, who runs the history shop, he said, "The state are looking for you." And I started to get a little cold under the collar, and I started to wonder what I'd done wrong. Anyway, that night, I got together with Kay Tucker, who is Jerry's assistant, and I guess the word was out that I was looking for something to do with the collection, and she said, well, the Alamo would like it. And I was like a dog with two tails, as they say in England. I just could not believe it, that the exact place where my collection should be housed, should live, is the place where it came from. There's things that I have that have never been back here since the day they left in 1836. And I am so proud to have this place as the home for it. And it's great pleasure for me to forget about the money. It's a big, expensive collection, and I'm just so pleased that people will, like me, visitors will be able to come and learn more about what happened here, learn more about the people that were involved in those events on both sides of the wall, because the history as told by Walt Disney and John Wayne was not the entire story, as we all know. There was brave men on both sides of that wall, and this collection would help to tell that story. And I'm just over the moon that I've been given the opportunity to find a home like this for it. So thank you for coming out. Thank you for Jerry, and it really is my pleasure.
Thank you, Phil Collins. We're going to entertain some questions from the press here, and then after that we'll have some other scheduled things, primarily media related. I will say that Phil Collins and I have many things in common. Well, maybe just a couple of things. Well, maybe just one. Is that we're both in our 60s. We both are wondering what to do with our stuff. He has a lot more important stuff than I do, and we both wore coonskin caps while watching Fess Parker when we were little. Other than that, we don't have much in common at all until today, and I'm really honored. I'm just real excited. So we could take some questions now from the press. Scott?
Can you tell me, did the state ask you to donate the collection, and does this effectively end your involvement with Texas history?
No, it doesn't end my involvement. It's my intention to just keep accumulating, keep collecting, and once I've lived with whatever I buy for a month, I'll be shipping it over here. So, it's something that I can't resist the idea of I'm kind of a bit of a magnet now for for things that are relating to the Texas Revolution. I mean, and it's not just here, it's Goliad and it's San Jacinto and Gonzales, you know, all the things that led up to this and led from it. So I'll still be collecting, I'll still be buying, and the pieces. I've already got, I wrote a book about the collection a couple of years ago, and I've already accumulated some stuff, there's some pieces that are great pieces since then, and they will be joining the collection here. And in terms of, did they ask me to donate it? I mean, there's only one way to do this, and that is we just sat down, and actually it was very low maintenance. The discussions, you know, it was, do you want it? Yes, we do. Well, I'll give it to you. You know, I mean, it was as easy as that. We're still ironing out the nuts and bolts and crossing the T's and dotting the I's, but there aren't too many of them to cross and dot. So.
So what's next for you? Are you gonna make more music?
Well, I've got to get the collection over here. That's, I mean, not myself personally, you understand, but I got to organise all that. That's in process. But no, I'm kind of enjoying my kids growing up, and I'm not doing too much. Although I'm not really here to talk about music, but Genesis have just got back together again for a long documentary on their. A long documentary on our career, which was good fun to see everybody again. But really, apart from that, there's nothing really happening musically. So,
Phil, do you have a question? Yeah, go ahead. Then we'll come over here to.
Ms. Collins, do you know how extensive your collection is? How many items and artifacts do you have? And is the room currently that house all of them are making available for display at the Alamo?
Well, I don't really know. I've never sat down and counted them. I mean, the book I did was about 400 pages, but there was obviously a lot of text in there. So I read somewhere there was about 200, and I know you shouldn't believe what you read. Believe me. So I would imagine, you know, I mean, there's a little collection of musket balls, which are about 40 or 50 of those musket balls. So that if you add each ball up, you know, then you're into the sort of, you know, probably 1,000. But I would think there's probably 200 plus pieces. What was the second part of your question? Oh no, well there isn't. I mean, there is if you cleared everything else out, but that's not going to happen. I think the idea, and Jerry could tell you more about this than I can, but the idea is there are changes afoot, as there have been for the last couple of years here, to do more. You know, when visitors come here, I suppose, because their interest is not as deep as mine, they come here, they see the church, and they wonder, is that all there is? You know, and I think that there's definite plans afoot to do something more here than there is, and so my collection will come over, and the thought is, the plan is to build something that will house it, and also help the visitor understand more than maybe they do at the moment. But so the idea is to build something.
You know, to be a little more specific, the land office is now the state agency in charge of the Alamo. We're in partnership with the DRT, working great. And as you stand here, the west wall was over there inside that row of buildings, and the north wall was over there in the post office. And there was a lot more to the Alamo in 1836 than what people see today. It is our desire to expand the footprint, to back to something like it was in 1836, to enhance the experience, to make this more of a historical scene than an urban scene. And with respect for the property rights of adjacent property owners, we think we can do that. We also intend to, we need a visitor center. There are current locations, currently existing buildings, because we're going to have a lot of stuff. And it's our intention to, when we get that center built, to have a Phil Collins collection. in honor of the gentleman that brought it to Texas, brought it home to Texas. So we have big plans. Part of that effort is the Alamo Endowment. Part of that effort will be state involvement, but we want to expand the footprint. We're working with the city of San Antonio now about what to do with Alamo Plaza, which is city-owned, and see if we can find a way to convey that to the state under one ownership so we can make this vision much bigger than it is today. Yes, sir.
Have you ever figured out why you're so fascinated with the Alamo?
Not really. I mean, my older children are convinced that I was here. You know, that's kind of an easy jump to make, I guess. I don't know what it is. No, it was. There's an interesting, one person, and I've said this before when I've been asked, but one person that fascinated me and continues to fascinate me, as there is no image of him, is John W. Smith, who was the main courier that went in and out of the Alamo quite a few times. And one of the first pieces I bought was the receipt for his saddle, 11th of April, just before San Jacinto. I mean, I was fascinated by this little piece of paper that was the receipt for a saddle that had done so many miles with him as a courier. And the guy, he just had to sell it because he didn't have any money, presumably. And I've always been fascinated with him. He was the first mayor, Anglo mayor of San Antonio. There's no image of him, and so I've always had a fascination with him. There's a clairvoyant I met once who claimed that I was he. I don't buy that. But nevertheless, it's just something that my interest was triggered by those events that I said, with John Wayne and Davy and Fess Parker. But I have no idea.
So, where did you find all this stuff? What's your favorite piece? And is your favorite piece coming here?
Well, it's once you start. I mean, I'm not a dealer, I'm a collector. When I get things, they don't leave my possession until now, of course. But you become a bit of a magnet. People start, especially when they've heard of you, like some people have heard of me. These people hear about it. They say, "Well, I got a cannonball, and I think it was from the Alamo," and so it goes. So it's surprising. I mean, it continues to surprise me that things do surface. After all this time, there was a lot of collecting items that day, after the battle. I mean, I won't say looting, but, these soldiers were living on nothing. And if they saw a sword or a knife, they took it because they couldn't afford anything like the quality maybe that they were seeing in front of them. So those things ended up in families, and I've got some things that came from some of those families that are prepared to let them go, or they need the money and they let it go. They're all different reasons. Everybody has their own reasons. My favorite piece, as I said, about the John W. Smith receipt, but I've got other things, that are very special, Crockett items, Bowie items, but they're all coming here. There's no point in me, keeping the cream of it for me, because I want everybody to see everything. So I bought a couple of things with me. One is a sword that was bought at San Jacinto. General Houston, he had an auction after the battle with the officers of all the weapons and pieces that had been taken from the Mexican soldiers. And there was a sword there that a private, Johnson, bought. And that sword was supposedly Jim Bowie's sword. It has his name on the spine of the sword. Who knows why suddenly something significant like that appears? I got a knife that I brought with me that was taken by Ramon Caro, who was Santana's secretary, that was taken by Caro after the battle from a defender. These things, they just turn up, and you got to have provenance, and I normally don't buy anything that doesn't have strong provenance, but it's all coming. It's all coming. It's hot, isn't it?
Welcome to Texas. I do want to make an announcement, though, in recognition of the tremendous benevolence of Phil. We're going to give him lifetime free admission here.
I'll keep you to that.
So, other questions?
You happen to know the appraised value of your collection? I hate to ask that, but it's been reported to be valued at tens of millions of dollars.
Well, it's not tens of millions. I think it's a little, being British, we don't talk about that kind of thing. It's interesting that, you know, the value of these things only is the value when you get two people in a room arguing about what it's worth. So it's a valuable collection. I'll leave it at that. You know, I don't want to get into how much. I mean, I've spent a lot of money on it, but then I drive a 10-year-old car. You know, so all the money that I would have spent on a new car has probably gone on this. So it's a substantial amount, but it's given me a huge amount of pleasure, and it's a challenge. You know, it's exciting. I wake up, go on the internet, see what my emails are, and see what's being offered to me today. You know.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I do. It was in 1973 when I first came here. We were on tour with Genesis, and I don't know where we were playing. We never actually played in San Antonio for some reason, but we were on tour, the very first tour of the United States, and I was with Peter Gabriel and our tour manager, and we had 3 days off. And we decided to have a day off each, where the other two members would just put up with the other person's idea of where he wanted to go. Peter wanted to go to the Grand Canyon, Hot Springs, I'm sorry. He wanted to go to Hot Springs. I wanted to come here. So I remember when I first turned the corner, and I believe back then in '73 the traffic ran a different way, because I remember turning the corner and this was on my left, but I was just spellbound when I first saw it in person. You know, having lived all my life just seeing it in books, in movies, and in pictures in magazines, it was really quite extraordinary. And there was a little cinema over there where they had a very cheap animation movie of the story of what happened, and I went to see it, and I came out half forgetting where I was, and when I came out and I saw this, it was very, very exciting. So yeah, I remember. It was the first time. It was 1973.
Jerry.
Yes.
Indirectly related to the Alamo. The Alamo Village is, I've seen pictures of you at Alamo Village, and there's a new push to attempt to restore the Alamo Village, where the original John Wayne movie was shot in 1960. And there is word that the original film, the 70mm film, has deteriorated to the point where it cannot be salvaged, 100%. Have you been in discussions about Alamo Village and possibly helping to restore that film, which captured you as a young man?
I haven't been approached, no. I mean, a few years ago, someone did approach me at the Alamo Symposium, which is every year here. And someone did approach me, or just introduce themselves, actually. I guess they had, the money. They thought they had the money to take it over and make some kind of visitors entertainment center there. I visited it, and it was, not quite the real deal, but it was very emotional going there. I walked around it with Richie, the guide, who was one of the main guides there. And the other Alamo in Austin, the last film burnt down because it was made like a Hollywood set. This place was built of stone, And I think that surprised John Wayne as well, because it has lasted. But I'm not involved in that. You know.
Are you aware that the film has deteriorated to the point where...
I've read it in the Alamo Journal, which I get sent, you know, when it's published. I'm aware that it's just had its 50th anniversary, I think. It was released or re-released. I believe I've read that it's deteriorated, but you know, that's what happens. I mean, but as I've not been approached, or I'm not involved in anything to do with that.
Mr. Collins, what was the first piece that you got?
Where are we at? Where's it coming from?
Ah, sorry.
What was your first piece that you got?
It was that. Well, it was bought for me by my wife, John W. Smith receipt. That was the first piece. You know, it's a small bit of paper, but it's. I think because it was my first piece and because of the significance of John W. Smith to this story, that's one of the most significant pieces that I have.
Are there things that are going to be displayed immediately at the Alamo?
By immediately, I think we can. Do you want to chip in there?
Yeah, the collection is extensive. It cannot be displayed all at one time, but when we receive items, we will be displaying them in part, what we receive, and rotating through them here at the current facility.
The collection should be on site in October. One of the main reasons that I said yes to the Alamo as opposed to looking for a museum somewhere else was, apart from the obvious reasons why it should come here, was that I felt that I wanted the entire collection on show. Most museums don't work like that. They display a certain amount of items and the rest sit in boxes in storage, and that was not what I wanted to happen to my collection. I wanted people to see it all. It took a lot of love and a lot of time and a lot of money to collect it, and I wanted all those pieces, as many as possible, out on display. That is not possible in the present circumstances. So as Jerry said, we're trying to, there will be a building which will house the whole thing. I mean, for example, there were some pieces we found over at the history shop on Houston when we did a little dig. We found some old pieces of cut iron that would have been used, probably those pieces, if not pieces like it, would have been used for cannon fodder when the ammunition, the cannonballs ran out. Now, they're rusty bits of iron. I think most museums wouldn't show that. They wouldn't exhibit that. Whereas here, you could see, wow, that's the kind of stuff that they had to fire from that wall that used to be over there. I think there's more interest in some of the smaller, less identifiable things with the collection coming here. So one of my criteria was that the collection should be on show in total.
Mr. Collins has been generous enough to give away a small fortune. Will the state of Texas pay to have these artifacts moved over from storage in Switzerland and have them housed on our dollar?
Well, to move the artifact, you just don't put them on a slow boat and haul them over across the pond. Archival boxing or packaging is necessary, archival transportation, and that adds a lot to just shipping something UPS. It's a totally different deal. And we are into discussions with Phil on that now. The state of Texas is going to be investing a great deal in what we do here. In addition to the state of Texas, the endowment, the Alamo Endowment, which has recently become formed, and recently obtained a 501c3 status, is seeking contributions. All of that will be for this entire effort to expand the footprint, to enhance the experience, and to tell the whole story here at San Antonio de Bejar.
Yeah, I'll take Jerry off the hook here. I remember our first meeting. Sorry, there's someone's microphone just. I remember our first meeting when I approached that subject. I said, I guess I'm going to be paying for the shipping, and Jerry diplomatically said, well, that would be good, yeah. So, that's something that it's all part of getting the collection here. I have no qualms about doing that. I'm going back in a couple of weeks. The shippers are coming to measure every single piece to make sure it's packed properly. I shall be there personally to make sure that everything goes in those boxes and is packed to my satisfaction. And it will all arrive here as it left Switzerland. And in return for that, I'm trusting the GLO and Jerry and the benefactors who will come in to donate money to build this building, that they will do their part, to build the place on wherever spot here it is decided upon to house the collection. So I'll do my bit, I'll give them the collection, and I'll get it here. But after that, it's down to the GLO.
Officially, when will the state of Texas own your collection?
Well, I guess, the point of no return will come when the pieces arrive here. Mentally, it's already theirs. Mentally, I've signed it over. Well, I haven't signed anything. Mentally, I've just said to myself, this is where it's going, and this is where it's going to be. I'm thrilled, for it to be coming here. If I wouldn't be as pleased about this if it was going to a museum. That was the only other possibility, and I never actually thought that it would be possible for it to have it here. So for me, it's a perfect situation. But it will be arriving in October, and the question of when the building is built so it can be on display totally is a question of how soon that the money can be raised to build the building we're talking about, Visitor Center Museum.
Yeah, we haven't signed anything, but we've howdied and we've shook. Right. I don't want to miss anybody. Who's Scott? You got Manny? You got a question? You've been pretty.
When are we going to get specifics about fundraising for the endowment? A plan that can be shared with the people of Texas so that we know what are you raising funds for, and is that going to happen before you leave office?
Just to be specific, we're going to have a gala event here on 30 October. We hope to have a more expansive, less high dollar crowd event also, but the gala event is $5,000 a head. So Scott, I haven't seen you on the list. I'll be looking. Phil?
How much needs to be raised?
Well, we're kind of, we don't know where we're going to put it, whether it will fit on the facility here. There's an area back of the church that was not part of the original footprint. There are existing government buildings that might be a way to house it. We may or may not acquire property. That will be a multi-year process. And of course, we have a legislative session in January, and I'll be talking to the legislature at that time, to where we hopefully will have a combination of public funds, maybe other funds, and private donations, because it will be a cooperative, because it's a big dollar, it's a big dollar amount. But there is no greater purpose and no greater place to spend these types of dollars today than here. I couldn't hear you. No. At this point, we don't have it's multi-millions of dollars.
Colin, you touched on doing a dig before. How was that experience, and are there any other digs in the works?
No, there aren't any other digs. What was the first part of the question? What was the dig like? Yeah, well, actually, I was, it was a very informal thing. But every time I came, I never found anything. So, but no, it was just on the floor site of the history shop, and it's there now. We left a hole with the perspex cover to show, so people can come in there. I mean, what is over there is, because one of the things when people come here that don't know too much about what happened here, they do come and yes, they can find out, but a lot of people if they're a tourist, they don't have that much of a vested interest in discovering as much as people like me who are, very interested in it. So what we have over there is a big diorama showing this footprint as it was, and I do the narration of that, explaining to the man on the street what happened where. There's a little, sound and lights exhibit there, and lots of interesting things were found. I mean, buttons, belt buckles, flattened cannonball was one of the interesting pieces. Lots of different things. We found lots of horseshoes, which led us to believe that maybe when General Andrade, who was left here by Santa Anna to flatten this area and make it, never, just sort of flatten the wall so it could never be defended again. Maybe that was the camp, that he had his wounded artillery, because they couldn't have camped in here. It was pretty rough place in here with the bodies and what have you. So we think maybe that was one of his camps for his soldiers, to reshoe the horses and kill the horses that were wounded. But there's no other digs planned. One thing I always think it would be useful to do, or would be a nice idea, was to have a living dig here, but there's morally there's an issue, because this is a burial site. Before it was the Alamo as we know it in 1836, it was the Alamo Mission and the Indian burial site. So there's probably lots of moral issues why that shouldn't happen. But
Colin, did you bring any of the collection with you today, or maybe when you first met with Jerry?
I'm sorry?
Did you bring any of the collection with you today?
I bought a couple of pieces that hadn't made it back to the Swiss main collection. I live in a reasonably small house in Switzerland, and in my basement is where all this stuff exists. But I've bought a couple of things in the last couple of months, and they were in New York. Because of the collection coming here eventually, I didn't bother to take it back to Switzerland, so I brought those two things with me. I've got more that I bought recently, but I just bought a couple of items to show everybody when we do the interviews. One was, which I mentioned earlier, was a sword that was supposedly belonged to Jim Bowie, and another was a knife that belonged to one of the defenders.
Bill, I have a question for a lady from the crowd over here. There's a lady over here. I'm asking a question for her. She wants to know if you have brought your family here to see, witness, feel the Alamo, if you're here now also.
I did bring, silly me, 2004 when I did the first final farewell tour. That's what I called it. It was my tour, and we played in Houston, and I thought that as I was in the area and I was coming off the road, I thought that I would pay a visit here, as this would be the last time possibly in 2004 that I would be passing this way. Silly me. So I bought my wife and my, I guess he was 2.5 back then, 2.5-year-old son Nicholas, and I dragged them around the Alamo for 2 hours. We got a flight from Houston to here, and then we went on to Chicago to play. Because I literally didn't think that I would be coming back too many times. And in fact, I've come back more since then than I ever had before. But yeah, my 2-year-old, he's now 13, and I have a 9-year-old, both of which are totally infatuated with the story here. My 9-year-old can name all the colonels and generals in the Mexican army. He knows all the main people. He watches, on the way over from Switzerland to Miami on Monday, he watched the Alamo movie. He's totally into it. And, so it goes on. Whatever Dad does, he does,
All right. Any other questions?
Anybody got a
Yes, we have a gentleman in the audience there. We could take a few. We've got a schedule, but we can have a.
Hello, Phil. My name is Jimmy Pete, Alamo Chapter, SRT. Thank you for mentioning John W. Smith's name. It allowed me to meet my cousin, Clark Carty. We're both descendants of John W. Smith. And Clark can tell you where a likeness is here in town of John W. Smith. So we'd love to talk to you sometime.
Absolutely.
Well, you could get in touch with Kay. Where's Kay? Well, right there. Just get the contact info to Kay. The gentleman in the straw Stetson there, the open road Stetson there.
I want to know about your extensive research because I'm a sixth generation direct descendant of Don Pedro Huitzali, and he was one of the master builders here. And he was Mexican still. My family was here maybe 65 years before the Battle of the Alamo, and we're still here. We've been here for over 20 or 40 years. And I want somebody to start mentioning the people who were responsible building the missions and where they were here to protect themselves.
Yeah.
Because the Alamo wasn't just here, and they stayed here, and they went inside the walls to protect themselves. It was a community. And a lot of people need to understand that that's what it was. And hopefully, with your collection and your knowledge of the battle, hopefully a lot of people start recognizing that the reason the Alamo was here was San Antonio de Valero, was because of the community. The community sense that was here, the rest of the mission, and the master builders, the people that carved and themselves, everybody was timely and involved with building something.
Absolutely. Well, there's, absolutely. There's a wonderful book by George Nelson which goes back and traces a lot of the history of the missions, and this is one of the things that I hope that with the collection coming here, I have it's a copy, but it's an original copy, if you know what I mean, of when the Presidio was down by the river. I don't go back as far as that, apart from that one piece, and I got a plan of the Quartel as well, and there's a lot of history here that a lot of people, they think of Davy Crockett, they think of Jim Bowie, and they think of Travis, all of which was important, but there's a couple of hundred years before that, which is what brought us all here, and what, so I'm fully behind you. That it's what happened here is just a small part of the jigsaw, and it's important that the history is looked at, much more in detail and in depth than just the way Hollywood has presented it. So I agree with you.
All right, I think we're going to.
Okay.
Well, and I'd like to also add to that, it is our intention, and we will tell the entire story, which is more than just what happened here on 6 March 1836. The bravery of the Tejanos, the 8, I can recite the names, Abanillo, Badillo, but I won't take up all the time, that died here fighting for liberty. And in addition to that, the bravery of the Mexican soldiers on the other side of the wall, as Phil referenced it. As a retired Marine, I have respect for my enemies from the past, even though I wanted to kill them, but nonetheless, I can respect them. But we need to tell the whole story, going back prior to 1718 or whenever the mission was established. That's all the questions we're going to have here. I would like everybody to give another raucous round of applause for Phil Collins.